I'm Matt Handy, and you're listening to My Last Relapse. Okay, we're on.
We're on, okay.
Yeah. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I'm really grateful for you to come on. So, Judge Griffith, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, you were appointed by Governor Abbott to do something specific, right?
So, yes, earlier this year I was appointed to be on the Texas Family Protective Services Council by Governor Abbott.
Okay.
And that's just a council. It's a public council. And we hear from CPS, and they tell us about their new policies and different things that they're doing. And we're able to ask questions and inquire, questions like the public would want to know, or just, like it's a thought-based council.
Okay.
And so that is just something that I do for that.
Mm-hmm.
But my primary job, I was appointed by Judge Olen Underwood back in 2014 to be the judge of the Child Protection Court in Harris County. It was the first Child Protection Court in Harris County.
Okay, cool. So do you have to get elected?
I'm not. I'm 100% appointed. I was originally appointed by Judge Olen Underwood, and then subsequently, so all the counties fall into different regions.
Mm-hmm.
And then several years ago, Harris County was moved into a new region. That was Region 11. And then Governor Abbott appointed Judge Susan Brown for that. And then Judge Susan Brown has been renewing my appointments.
Okay, cool. Cool.
I think I'm on my third appointment.
How long do the appointments last?
4 years.
Oh, wow.
It's the same term as the elections.
Yeah.
But I just don't have to go through the
election cycle. Right. Yeah.
The campaigning and everything, just get to really focus on the job and not that other portion.
That's awesome. So mostly you're dealing with CPS involved people and like family courts?
Yeah, so not even mostly. That's 100% what I do.
Okay.
So if the case does not involve CPS in any way, I do not hear it.
Okay. Do you find that a lot of the CPS involved people have substance use issues?
Yes.
Okay.
It's not every single one, but I mean, you're hitting 85 plus percent of cases are going to involve some sort of substance abuse.
Okay. What is the earliest age that you see kids are getting involved in this?
So the CPS, if you're talking about just for substance abuse removal or just CPS removal?
I guess both, but then, the substance abuse as well. So
it will vary, but a lot of times it's going to be women that are testing positive at birth.
Oh, wow.
And so those don't always result in removals, though. There's several different layers and stages of CPS cases. So everything starts off with an investigation.
Okay.
CPS is only going to remove if there's an ongoing continuing danger, safety, welfare of the child in the home. So if there is an alternative, maybe there's a relative the child can go with, so the mom can work services. They, maybe they'll do what they call family-based safety services. There's alternative responses. There's several different things CPS can do before they get to the point of actually removing a child.
Okay.
And they try to do, the least
interference
or, the least trauma. Because anytime a child's removed from a home, infant or older, there's going to be a trauma, there's a break in a bond, there's the inability to bond. Mm-hmm. So CPS does work hard to keep families together before we even get there. So, but you'll see, so when we're talking about coming into the court system, if there's not a safe way for that mom, or this might be the mom's third, fourth, fifth positive child, those are the ones, those kids will come in as infants. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes you'll have infant, and then there's other kids in the home, and then, all the siblings will be removed. And then you have the older kids come in as well.
Are you trying to keep the siblings together?
The goal is always to try to keep the siblings together when possible and when safe. Unfortunately, just kind of the way our system is set up, if you have a large sibling group coming in, 6 kids, 5 kids, even 3 is considered large. Mm-hmm. There's a massive age range. Some foster homes, they only take 0 to 3. Mm-hmm. Some foster homes only take females. And then we have... if you get above, I think it's like 6 now. Some of these rules have been changing. If you get above 6, they're considered group homes. And if you have a group home, then there's different rules that come in place with it. And you have that 24-hour awake staff in your home. So you have your home, you're a foster parent, but you have to have somebody awake all the time. So there's lots of different rules that makes it really hard to keep siblings together.
Yeah.
You typically won't see. So there are times when, maybe a mom has a 12-year-old and then a couple kids in between, and then they have the newborn test positive. They all come into care. It's hard to get that newborn and that 12-year-old put together because there's some foster homes, they just focus on the babies, and some foster homes want kids school age, right? So they're not having to worry about daycare and waking up in the middle of the night. And, so it's hard to keep sibling groups together, but the focus is always to try to keep them together. That's why we really try to get relatives. So we can get the kids placed with relatives, keep them together. If maybe grandma can't take all 4 kids, but she can take 2, and then, the aunt that lives across the street can take the other ones, and they're in the family, they're seeing each other. That's, really what the goal is, to keep that family unit together.
So how'd you get into this?
So it really, Professor Ellen Marrus at the University of Houston is how I got into this.
Okay.
I went to law school. I wanted to be a criminal defense attorney. That was my focus going into law school. That's what I wanted to do.
Why?
When I was growing up, just some different things I saw with the juvenile system and how it kind of affected my family.
Okay.
And just different things with that. And I really gravitated to that. From a very young age, I wanted to be a lawyer. Like my mom embedded that in my head. I love to argue. I would not quit until my point was made and everybody relented that I was right, even when they knew sometimes I probably wasn't. But that was just kind of like my personality growing up.
Okay.
And so my mom always said, you're going to be a lawyer. You need to be a lawyer. You should be a lawyer when you grow up. I have an older brother. We used to fight, and she would hold mom's court. And so we'd sit there, and she'd be the judge, and we'd sit there and go back and forth together. She just really put that into me from a very young age. So that was my goal, going all the way through high school, college, went straight from college into law school. So my focus was going to be the juvenile criminal system, because that's what had impact on me when I was a teenager from some family members. And so I went in law school back then. We had clinics and they voluntary. You didn't have to do them. And, so I went and I did the juvenile defense clinic. And I did that for 1 year. And that was during my 2-year of law school. And then after that, there was no other clinic like that. So this kind of was over. But Professor Marrus said she's going to do this child dependency clinic. Asked me if I was be interested, because I had done the other classes. And I was like, yeah, why not? I didn't really have an interest in it. And had never thought about it. And so I did that my last semester of law school, and I completely fell in love with that area of law. The way in Harris County to get appointments for juvenile defense work, you had to practice for 3 years before you can get on the wheel. Okay. So when I came out and opened up my own law firm with my my best friend, John Tay, we're like, well, we'll start with the CPS side with it, because we can get those appointments immediately. And we just built up the practice so fast and so big that when it came time for us to be eligible to start taking juvenile appointments, we were fully ingrained in the CPS world. And that's cool. Where I just continued forward from there. Just passion representing kids. I also represent a lot of parents as well. I think you have to have that balance and perspective. You can't if you just represent the parents, and sometimes you fail to see what the kids' needs are. And then if you just represent the kids, and you don't really see what the parents struggle with, all trying to get their kids back and making sure they get everything done. So
multifaceted and fully understanding the situation and the family's dynamic as far as it's interacting with the courts and stuff.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. And how was law school?
Law school's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny because actually I'm not a big reader. I don't like to read. You won't see me sit down and just pop open a book and read for pleasure. And then I go to choose this career that has a lot of reading in it. Law school is a ton of reading, every single class. You have to be prepared, know your cases. But I was doing something that I was passionate about. I knew this is where I wanted to be. And then, once I got into the clinics, that just the passion for law just kept, continuing to build. I also did something called mock trials.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to be a litigator. And, that's part of being in the criminal world is a lot of litigation. And so I did mock trials starting from my 1L year all the way on to. So, I did stuff that kept my mind active and going. And so it wasn't just focused on book study. I was doing other stuff that was real practical as well.
Yeah. When my dad graduated law school, I was 12. And so I watched him. And by the time he graduated, he had 8 kids.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Or 6 kids. Oh, it was a lot of kids. 6 or 8. It was something like that. Actually, it had to have been.
6 kids is not a lot.
Yeah.
Somebody that has had 6 kids.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. My parents have 10 kids.
Oh, wow.
I'm the oldest of 10 kids.
You're the oldest. So you're on that top of that pecking order. How's that?
I completely failed in my obligations as the oldest, I would say. I was a really good example of what not to do.
What not to do. But that's also important, though, right?
Yeah. they all did really well. So, I mean,
You just followed your not steps.
yeah,
Don't do that.
yeah. So, yeah, by the time he graduated, I mean, I watched him. So it was California. So California bar, like studying the whole nine. And then he got into civil prosecution. And he ended up becoming like a really, really he won California lawyer like a bunch of years in a row, and
That's
like
awesome.
argued in front of the Ninth Circuit a bunch of times, and like did a bunch of really cool stuff around the ADA, and got some laws changed and stuff. So it was really cool to like watch all that, but I wouldn't have wanted to do it, right? And my whole thing growing up was like, I'm going to be a lawyer. I'm going to join the family law firm. And then I caught my first felony at 16, and I felt I could see the doors, like the gates in my future shut, like in my face. I was like, I can't go to law school anymore. So what am I going to do? And from there, it was just like spiraled down like really quickly.
From there. So that's also, so I'm from California.
Okay. What part?
The Bay Area.
Okay.
Went to Santa Clara High School. And,
Wow.
you know, so that's kind of what I'm seeing, like when you, even as a young teenager, you know, I was going to, visiting a family member in the juvenile system, you just kind of see that like this world, and it's like something has to be better than this. Like we have to do better for our teenagers, because what you do when your brain is absolutely not fully developed, and you know you're not fully thinking, and you're getting caught up in all the societal pressures, that's not who you're going to become.
Yeah.
But like you said, like you at 16, you felt like the walls are caving in and over, but you're only 16 and you have a whole lifetime in front of you. So how can we have a system that's going to be better to tell you that, like, hey, this is you at 16, but we need to let's look 10 years down the road, and we don't have to be and stay there. And how can we make that system better so people like what your feeling was doesn't feel like they're going to now be put in this box forever because of a mistake that they made as a teenager?
Yeah. So I have like a unique journey in that as well, because I don't feel like so I've done a lot of prison time, and I've done a lot of time with people who started doing prison time as a teenager, right? And then it just continued on into their adulthood. And one of the like major adverse effects of locking kids up at such a young age is they get very acclimated to it, like really, really quickly. And so my experience with high-level gang members in prison is they all started in juvenile situations, right? Very rarely do you see somebody who came into prison as an adult for the first time and then they operate on like a high level in prison. It's always people that go in as juveniles and then evolve into like that criminal mentality. And so, yeah, and you know, like California's juvenile system with the whole CYA and the way that was, it's gone now, but that really was, they called it training school, right? Like that really set up kids for
the adult criminal life.
And so, yeah, I feel like there's a lot of similarities as far as what is promised and then what's actually delivered in the most juvenile systems and the substance abuse world too. Like we promise that we're going to do all this stuff and like upfront. And I don't know if it's a funding thing where it's like we have to check off boxes and we have to say certain things in order to like justify expenditure and all that stuff. But like what's really going... So California changed from the CDC to the CDCR. Do you remember this?
I know I've been to some presentations where they talked about the changes and, you know, when that philosophy really started changing from incarceration, rehabilitation, even though it was always supposed to be rehabilitation, right. It was very incarcerated focused. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So I was locked up and sent to prison I went to prison for the first time in 2009, and this is really when the R got implemented. And from the prisoner's perspective, all it did was get more funding. Right, the system didn't change. Yeah, and so we're all sitting back going like, okay, it got harder for us to go to school. There was no more like there was like SAP programs, SAP programs, substance abuse programs, and it was like way harder to get into them because now they're creating yards for substance abuse programs, and in order to get there, you have to qualify, and it's like.
And there's all these things excluding you, right? Mm-hmm. It's not trying to include you because everybody needs it.
Mm-hmm. And the thing is, like, I don't know what the statistics are on people that are going into prison and what the abuse rate is, but everybody that I knew, everybody that I was associating with, every single person had substance abuse issues that was going into prison. Whether that was the main problem or not, it's kind of irrelevant. They were all using drugs. And so I started using hard drugs when I was a juvenile, right? Like I smoked weed on my 13th birthday. Within a month, I had tried coke, and then was smoking coke before I was 16. Was slamming heroin by the time I was 17, and it was everybody there was heroin dealers going to my high school, right? And so, and this was a little bit different. Like I feel like exposure to drugs is happening older today, but also younger. Do you get what I'm saying? Like,
Yes.
Okay. So another thing that's also happening is this Generation Alpha, they're 2 to 12 right now. They are making major commitments to like celibacy and sobriety and stuff like that. They're sober high schools, right?
That wasn't something.
No, I've never
That was never even heard of.
No, and in my head, I'm like, okay, sober high school is like they don't drink at school because there was people doing drugs and drinking at school.
At school.
Right.
Which there is now too. Like,
Yeah.
That hasn't changed.
Yeah. And so in my head, I'm like, what, they just don't drink at school? Or like, and they're like, no. These kids are like, they have like high accountability outside of school. They don't drink. They don't use drugs. They don't do any of this stuff. Like in high school, like they're conscientious about this stuff. And I'm like, how are they learning this stuff? Because these kids, like my generation they're this kid's parents. And my generation is so fucked up. Like, we're all doing drugs. Nobody stays married anymore. There are no like nuclear family. I mean, it's a rare thing. They're out there, but it's rare.
It's not even just not staying married. They're not even getting married. They're just like, no, we've been together. We have 5 kids. Been together 15, 20 years. Like it's just a different philosophy.
And that's on like the really low end of happenstances where they're just not getting married. Most of it is like, well, hookup culture, right? They get pregnant and they're not even together, right? And so now you've got these situations where kids are being raised in single-parent homes, which I have nothing against single-parent homes, but the government tracks outcomes and statistics around this stuff. And I read a study a couple months ago that said it's better for a child to have both biological parents in the home where they're being abused physically than to be raised in a single-home parent. Outcomes are better for that kid.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And so, they've been tracking this stuff since like the 40s. And so with stuff like we know this stuff's out there. Like we know that they understand the situation, but as my generation and it scares me because we're about to like take over the country. Like we're going to be like calling the shots here soon. And it's like, I'm scared for our future because of my generation. But then you've got these kids that are being raised by this generation, and it's like they're making all of these decisions way earlier than I was never thinking about sobriety. I was never thinking about being chased or like anything like that. I was thinking about the complete opposite. I was trying to do drugs and hook up with girls as early as possible.
And the assumption too, right? So I've assumed based on what your dad was doing, you were in a more affluent high school.
No.
You weren't?
No.
Oh,
So
okay.
we were dirt poor, like in the ghettos of San Diego. Like he was just grinding. And we had like a ton of kids too. And so
That makes a big difference.
Mm-hmm. Now I have like a really well put together family and extended family, but they just hadn't made it, right? They were just trying to get there. My dad is also the oldest of his siblings. And so they were all teenagers. Their parents had just been divorced. So my grandparents got divorced, I think 3 years before I was born. And so the family was just falling apart and it was just a mess, right? And so, yeah, I went to like John Adams I went to John Adams, Alice Burney. I went to like really not affluent schools.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was an assumption that I made that was wrong.
I mean, it's a good assumption though, right? A lot of kids that are being raised in like an affluent situation go to affluent schools, but we just weren't there, right? Like my dad grinded to get out of there. Mm-hmm. And that was all my friends too. Like there was a kid in my first grade. He had a nickname, and they called him Bud because he would smoke weed, and he was like 7. Yeah.
That's the stuff I can't imagine. That's the stuff that we would. I don't want to say I can't imagine that, but because that's the stuff that we do see.
Yeah.
Right. In my world, like that's not acceptable, and that's get your CPS case and get that involvement, and then change things.
And this was also in the 90s.
Yeah.
So things were like really different.
Then.
Yeah. I mean, even like the way that kids are disciplined is massively different today than it was.
Oh, absolutely.
If my parents disciplined us today the way that they did back then, they would have been CPS involved, right? But it wasn't abusive back then. Like, the way that things are being defined has changed. And, like, I don't know if it's better for kids or not. Like, I just had a baby last week.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And we have a 4-year-old. And our 4-year-old's amazing. And hopefully the other one will be too. But it's like, we can't spank our kids anymore, right? But, like, I don't, like, thinking about my child, and it's like, how would they have controlled us if they didn't spank us? Like, how do you do that?
So it's a matter of, changing your mindset as well, right? And I also said, there is a difference between physical discipline and physical abuse.
For sure.
But there's a fine line.
Very fine.
Right? Mm-hmm. And there's some people that will cross that line very quickly. Mm-hmm. And there's some people that will never get up to that line. They can, kid goes in to touch fire and their hand's right there and they clap them on the hand and then, life keeps on moving. And would we call that physical abuse? As physical discipline. Is it appropriate or not appropriate? I mean, I think that's a debate that's still going on because I also think a lot of people say, this new generation, they just don't have the discipline that the other generations have because we're changing things in philosophy. And it's a cycle that's going to have to completely go through. Like, can we discipline just through our words and our actions and being firm? And if I say, stop doing, then I remove you from the situation. Can we instill that type of parenting, the gentle parenting, I think is what they call it now.
Yeah.
And to be honest, like, I don't know if we know it's going to work. Like, it's one of those things that's going to go through this generation and we'll look back and say, okay, a gentle parenting worked for this generation. Or we'll go back and say, yeah, maybe gentle parenting wasn't it.
Yeah.
I think just as a society, it's like bell bottoms. They came back and then they're going to go back out of style.
Yeah.
And it's going to come back. And I think the same thing with kind of parenting and culture norms. And I think that's just our society just constantly evolves. Mm-hmm. We're a lot more on social media, so we see stuff coming from other cultures as well, and we try to bring it in, and that's, America's that melting pot, right?
Yeah.
We're a melting pot of a lot of different cultures, and we try to, work within it, and I think that's kind of, how parenting is going to go as well. It's just going to ebb and flow, and but we always have that line that we can't cross.
Yeah.
If you choose to physically discipline your children, you have to know there's a line, and when you cross that line, then that's where my world steps in, right?
Yeah.
Can step in and then help teach you different ways to do it.
So it's obviously like a subjective line, right? It's very interpreted like on an individual basis based on circumstances, I'm assuming, right? Like, but there is nothing that you can point to say this is where that line is, right?
I think it's one of those things like, you know that line when you see that line.
Okay. Right?
When you see that kid come in and they have welt marks and they have belt marks and they have, the black eye because, the mom got mad and just punched her daughter in the eye. Like, I think we can all agree as a society
For sure.
that's not, there's no discipline in that.
Yeah.
And so we can say it's subjective, but I think it's also very clear. There's different type of cases when we talk about some like medical cases with babies and abuse, and people can have some different opinions, and doctors can come and testify about different things with that, and that might be a little bit more difficult to determine. But I mean, I think you'll see a clear line on abuse a lot of times.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Neglect is actually one of the areas where people can say there probably is a little bit more subjective, right?
Oh yeah.
And that's a lot of time when we see with the drugs.
I was going to say that
to come into the neglect cases.
Yeah.
And so then it is, you have that mom that, maybe she drops her kids off at the grandma's house on Friday and she gets high, does cocaine Friday, Saturday, Sunday, sobers up, picks up her kids on Monday. Those kids are in school Monday through Friday. They're doing great. They're rocking and rolling and there's no issues. The house is clean. She goes to work every single day. But she uses drugs on the weekend. Those moms do exist. I've seen them in the system.
Yeah.
Like you look at those kids, the mom that I'm speaking of, her kids were on the honor roll. She was actually not the team with the room mom at school. Yeah. The room mom at school, right? So she's very involved in her kids' education. They all had perfect attendance. She used cocaine every single weekend. Her cocaine levels were over 20,000 picograms.
Wow.
Right? So it was high.
Yeah.
Her kids were well taken care of. And so that's why I can say that you do have some subjectiveness, like, when it comes to that. But we also, I think we can agree, like a parent using cocaine and parenting, how effective of a parent are you? How capable are you to keep your kid safe if you're using it while parenting?
she sounds effective. Obviously, the kids aren't there while she's using, but
It's your big area right there.
yeah, the major problem that I've seen, like I was homeless with people having kids. Homeless. Yeah, and but it was a mess, right? And kids living in a tent under a bridge in San Diego. It was and then me and my wife, we were homeless together, and we both got clean, and now we're, doing the good things. But we were always like, how do they have their kids still? It's like, we're not going to call the cops. Looking back on it now, it's like, maybe we should have. I don't know. But it's like, how do they still have their kids? Like, how are these kids going to school?
Well, let me ask you, were they going to school?
I don't know.
Were they fed? I mean, you don't know that.
Yeah, they
now.
were.
I mean,
they were definitely fed.
Were they keeping their kids clean and they're fed and they're going to school? Because then you run into that line of, are we removing kids because they're impoverished?
They were also really strung out on drugs.
So then
yeah, and they were sitting in circles of adults doing drugs too.
Mm-hmm. So then I would say, yeah, to me that's neglect,
mm-hmm.
right, and psychological abuse.
Yeah,
and then that's a situation that we should be removing kids from.
Yeah, for sure.
And then getting those parents help, right? Because we also know, keeping kids in the family, not always, but most of the time, it is better for that child. So how can we get the kids in a safe situation where we can get the parents into treatment?
Yeah.
And not just, I always say there's a huge difference between abstaining from drugs and sobriety.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And I know you know that. And but in my world, I see this and, ask the questions like, if you're, I've been clean for 6 months. What's your sobriety date? I don't know.
Yeah.
Right? There's just certain things that I know, no, you're abstaining from drugs. Oh, the day CPS took my kids, I stopped using. Okay, so what happens when your kids get back?
Yeah.
Because if you don't have the tools and the resource in a sober community and you don't have everything that you need to continue to be a sober parent for yourself, then we're going to continue to have the problem. And that's really where our system needs to start meeting up with what our kids need as well that are within the system.
So this actually gets into some... my question around that, what you're talking about right now, is how many of these people are actually addicts, though? Right? Because I think a lot of people make it's like a fallacy where they say if they're doing drugs and they have an adverse whatever, anything, that they're an addict. And I would venture to say that, the 12-step programs, when it was first created, almost 100 years ago now, right? Yeah. It had almost 100% efficacy rate. People would enter AA and they got almost 100% of the time got clean forever, right? And now people are being sent into these situations as a preventative measure instead of the last resort, which was ultimately what it was created for alcoholics that had no other answer, right? And so now you've got 19-year-olds, 18-year-olds, 17-year-olds, the mom that, whatever it was, she ended up testing dirty, or somebody called and they're she ended up smoking weed on the weekends or whatever. And now this person's going through the system and they're being labeled as something that maybe they don't deserve that label, right? And then one thing that I've seen is that people will get sent into these situations as a preventative measure, and they don't fit into that criteria as the book says, right? They don't fit into that box of addict or alcoholic, but they have these consequences over their head. And so now they use, and now they've kind of been indoctrinated, or they have these consequences where they're going, okay, I have to stop. And they start what looks like a relapse cycle, right? Where they use and then stop, and then use and then stop, and then use and stop. And then everybody can point at it and be like, oh, this person's an addict, right? Because they've started this use and abuse cycle that would be indicative of addiction, but it doesn't necessarily point to addiction when you look at the criteria for what is an addict or an alcoholic, right? So my whole thing around this is I get why people were sent there, to begin with, because ultimately you get sent into this situation, there's something wrong, right? If you're getting sent to meetings, if you're going to get services from something happened, right? But some of these people, and I see them all the time, where it's you're, and I can't qualify anybody as an addict or alcoholic, but they are convinced they're not an alcoholic. I'm pretty convinced they're not an alcoholic, but they have to still participate.
It's being hard.
Right? And so how do we get into a situation where we're offering services? And really a lot of it is education, right? How are we like servicing these people correctly so that they are not put into this box? So I have a friend, she was going through a divorce, and her divorce attorney was like, I know how you can win 100% custody, right? You drink, your husband drinks, go to a rehab and start going to AA, and you'll win full custody, right? And so she started going and got full custody. The whole, like, it all worked, but then she was indoctrinated around that program, right? And then 9 years later, she was like, you know what? I'm not an alcoholic. And then she started drinking again, and she's been drinking for like 4 years, and she wasn't an alcoholic, right? And that happens, I think, more often than we realize, because from my point of view, if you're coming to me, there's a problem, right? And we're going to always super suggest that, like, you just don't use again, because ultimately, like, everybody's life's better without substances. It doesn't matter if you're like drinking on the weekend or like you have a sip every now and then or whatever. It's like you're opening yourself up to adverse, all kinds of stuff like DUIs, problems at work, whatever, problems at home. Everybody's life's better without substances. But it doesn't necessarily mean that everybody has substance issues.
That's correct.
And so how many people do you see where you would say like that's kind of like the issue is like they just got in trouble, but now they're being labeled?
So I don't think I can really quantify that, but I hear what you're saying, and I can say, been doing this for over 20 years.
Okay.
And my perspective on that has changed over the 20 years, because I've had parents that come in and kind of challenge that notion, like, I'm not an addict. If I have a drink on the weekend, like, I'm not an addict. And so, and that's where, like, as a judge.
Where did you start in your opinions, and where are you at now?
So I think pretty much when I started, like, if you are testing positive, and you have a CPS case, then clearly, you have to be an addict, because, who wouldn't stop using just because you're, you're involved in CPS, right? But then you got to start looking at, what's the different situations that are coming in. Maybe this was a dad that didn't have custody of his kids every single, he only had them on the weekends. And so, he was doing his lives, and, there's a lot of different circumstances that come into that. And that's also, from our standpoint, that's why we have to have the professionals. I truly believe addiction is a disease, right? Mm-hmm. And there's some people that have the disease and some people that don't have the disease. Mm-hmm. It's also hereditary, and you see it come generation after generation after generation. And you can break that cycle by talking about it, and also by acknowledging it. Addiction runs in my family. It's something that I'm open with. I have a 20-year-old and an 18-year-old, and we have had those conversations since they were young about, addiction. And it's not just drugs and alcohol, right? If you have the disease of addiction in your family, it can come in all shopping,
eating, sex,
gambling, like it can come, video games, right?
Oh, that's a big one right now.
Right? That's huge. And even for me, like, I play Yahtzee. I love
Yahtzee.
Way too much, though.
Yeah.
Like, my husband's like, you're playing it again.
Do you play 10,000?
No, I just play Yahtzees for buddies.
Okay.
Yahtzees with buddies, I think is what it's called.
There's another dice game called 10,000. It's like Yahtzee on steroids.
Is it really? Because that's what I need, something else in my life on steroids. But yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
No, I'm just joking. But no, actually, I will try it out, because
10,000.
Yahtzee 10,000. I will look at it.
It isn't Yahtzee. It's just 10,000.
Oh, it's just 10,000.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll put it in my Play Store and see.
I cut you off. I'm so bad about like.
Yeah, that's conversation, though.
Yeah.
Tamisha and I were talking the other day, and this is probably every conversation we have. We literally have about 6-7 conversations in one 20-minute interaction, and we bounce in between all 6 of them. My husband was in the room with us one day, and we were having our conversation over lunch, and then I left, and he was sitting there with Tamisha, and he's like, I don't know what just happened. Like, what did you guys just do? He's like, he's like, you guys had 6 conversations. I couldn't keep up with anything you guys are saying, but you guys clearly understood everything you guys were talking about. And I'm like, it's just what we do all the time. So I'm good with that.
Yeah. I mean, the face of addiction has changed dramatically in the last 5 years. And the landscape of addiction has changed with the introduction of fentanyl, and the privatization of the treatment situation has also done a lot of damage, I think. It was unintentional. A lot of people get into the treatment industry with good intentions, but Do you know what the Recovery Research Institute is?
I've heard of it.
Okay. So they've done, metadata studies, analysis. They ran a bunch of studies around a bunch of like outcomes driven studies. And one of the things that they point to is that like the privatization of the treatment industry. And that's another thing is like, in the nonprofit space of the addiction industry, they don't even call it the addiction industry or the recovery industry. It's the field of addiction, right? And so just the words in and of itself signify something very different. And so like the treatment industry, like that's what I'm involved in, right? And I look at all this stuff and I'm going, we are claimed to be in the business of saving lives, right? Like you hear it all the time, like we're in the business of saving lives. And something that I've learned is that we're not in the business of saving lives. We're in the business of saving lives that can pay for treatment.
That pay for treatment, yeah.
Right.
And then it's starting to be justified too because, okay, we have to do this because that's the only way that we can keep viable. And, you know, we got to keep the money coming in, we got to keep doing this. And then that's how we get to less treatment. You know, how many treatment, like we're Harris County, Houston. Right?
Yeah.
How many inpatient women treatment facilities do we have right now?
Only one.
One.
Yeah.
Right. When I first started 20 years ago, I was 4.
Okay. And they just slowly kept getting shut down.
And it's just, and guess what? The need hasn't gone away.
No.
Right? And
no,
so it's
gotten
like,
worse.
It's gotten worse,
Yeah.
right? And can we point to like when we have less treatment facilities to do treatment at, and then it's gotten worse and we have nowhere to go, and then we can't do treatment. There's no room in this treatment facility. So then where do they go? They go to jail. And then what are we going to get in jail? And we're just going to continue to fall down, you know, a negative, the negative cycle. And it's just, we're not doing anything to help what needs to be helped with. And even starting from the younger age, like right now, it's the vapes. And it's not just nicotine vapes; it's the THC vapes, and it's completely infiltrated our schools. And I can't just say it's high school; it's our junior highs, it's our middle schools. The
vapes is a big thing, but another big my doctor. Do you know who Dr. Shah is?
I don't.
Okay. So we do live specials every Tuesday, and we just did one on kratom, and we went down the rabbit hole on kratom.
Yes.
And like how dangerous kratom ends up being, and like what kratom addiction looks like, what withdrawal looks like, how it's a real gateway drug to a lot of other stuff. And he told me, he was like, when he was researching this stuff, he found out that there's kids that are kratom dealers. They're like selling kratom to other kids. It's like, what? And so it's funny because like when I was in high school, there was real kids dealing heroin at our school. There was also a daycare for students that had kids, right? And so, you know, it was the situation back, and now you've got like sober high schools where they're like committing to celibacy and like being chaste until they're married and stuff like that. And then it isn't like, it sounds like a very Christian structured, like almost belief system, but it's like, no, that's not what's good. These kids are just like looking at I think this is what's going on. They're looking at my generation and going, these people are fucked up. Right? We don't want to be anything like them.
Like that.
Yeah. And so how do we not do that? It's like, oh, you take away the drugs and the hookup culture and shit seems to straighten itself out. Right? But it's like everything is so at the tip of your fingertips right now. Like anything that you want, I don't have to go to the grocery store anymore. Like I can order everything to my front door.
It's delivered right there.
Yeah.
And same thing as drugs. They'll put them in your mailbox. Right?
Oh, yeah.
You know, parents don't realize that. Like, I don't know where they're getting it. I said, they're being dropped off. Like, what? Like, you think that was Uber Eats? That just came to your house? It wasn't. So, yeah, everything's accessible now.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And you know, the creativity of the way that they hide it right now, too. Like, you know, everything is the new packaging. Like,
we literally talked about this.
Right? It's like, oh, you think your child's just eating gummy worms right now? You know, and you know, a lot of parents aren't really educated on that. I will say, my kids probably say, you know, tell me, we're not one of your clients. I heard that from my older ones all the time. You know, I'm like, hey, I see different things than other people see, and and because of that, we do things different than other people do. Right? Roblox. My kids do not touch that.
Yeah,
I mean, my younger ones, my older ones, I mean, they're 18, 20 then. But my younger ones, and they don't understand it because all their friends are on it and all their friends are doing it. And I'm like, there's just certain things that you'll just not be able to do because I see things that other parents just don't see, and we're not going down that route.
Yeah, that's the online gaming, Roblox specifically, that comes up constantly around like breeding grounds for predators.
Absolutely.
And yeah, the drug situation in the country has always been fascinating to me. When I started doing heroin, there was like a big propaganda movement that said like, if you do heroin, you're supporting the Taliban. Do you remember this?
I don't remember that. Supporting the Taliban?
Yeah. So I started doing heroin in like 2006. And this was like the height of the Iraq war, like the Afghanistan.
Yes.
And that was like a thing where like you would hear it is like, if you do heroin, you're supporting terrorism. Right. And in my head, I'm like, I don't even know any terrorists, like it doesn't make sense.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, well, maybe they're growing it, but how is it getting here? Right. And that kind of like started my journey on like, what's going on? And where we're at today is like, okay, fentanyl's coming in from China, but China's thousands of miles away. Like, what's going on right here?
Right here.
Like, I don't know if you can comment on this or not because of being a judge or whatever, but like, why did COVID and the introduction of fentanyl happen at the same time? And why is everybody saying it's coming from the same place? And it's like massive numbers of it. Fentanyl hit the market, became the number one cause of death for people under 40 in 2 years.
It was really fast, very rapid.
I mean, that's crazy. I knew people that like smoked crack and did heroin for 30 plus years and never, like overdosing, yeah, maybe, but like not dying. Everybody's dying. Like I know people I hear it all the time where I was like cross-contamination of drugs. I just had somebody on, he was doing coke and overdosed and almost died because there was fentanyl in it, right? It's in everything.
It's in everything, yeah.
Yeah. And now you're talking about like I had somebody recently was like listening to the podcast and he called me. He was like, should I be worried about like THC vapes? And I told him like, dude, just start researching, right? Like where are they coming from? Yeah, it might be packaged, sold in a store or whatever, but where's it being produced? Who owns these companies? And if you follow the money long enough, you'll see that like a large percentage of this stuff still comes from like nefarious companies and like people and like who invested and like where's all this shit coming from? It's like, dude, the reality is my life wouldn't be the way that it is if it wasn't for my drug use. But I'm not the norm. Like the norm is you start doing fentanyl, you die. Like that's just the norm.
That's right.
My story is like, I think not unique terminally, right? A bunch of people get clean, but I wouldn't be who I am today if it wasn't for my experience in drug use, homelessness, prison, like all that stuff. But I'm one of the very few people that like made it out alive, fully intact, and like did something with it, right? Like how many people are out there struggling? How many people are you working with? And it's like, what are the chances? Like, what are the chances that this is going to be the last time?
Not just the last time I see them in front of me, right? But that they go back to relapse and then their kids fall into that cycle. Mm-hmm. And then, I had the mom, now I had the kids, the grandkids.
Have you seen that?
I have been very fortunate not to see a grandchild come back in.
Okay.
But I've had kids that were in care and then their kids came back in.
Okay.
And they didn't come into care for anything that they did. It was their parents' action that brought them into care.
Okay.
But as a system, weren't able to support them in everything they needed. And then they went back and did what they learned growing up. And then their kids have come back into care. And that I have seen. And that's another one of those generational curses that we're trying to break and trying to stop. And yeah. But I will say this too, what I see from the parents that I continue to work with, and we can get them clean and sober, but they have such a hard time getting jobs.
This is something I talk about.
Such a hard time getting, how many addicts actually can keep a lease for a whole year, right? So they have broken leases. Their credits are terrible. There's so many things that are stacked up against them, and it's hard just to fall back right in. Or even if they stay sober, it's still struggle. Like it's still a struggle. And so you're right, like to be able to get to that next level, take that and just continue like to build forward. That is the hardest path.
Yeah, it's easy to get sober. It's hard to stay sober. Mm-hmm. But I tell people all the time, it's like there is a misconception around quitting that I think a lot of people get sold this dream about, like, all you got to do is stop using and life gets better. And it's like, typically the way that it works is you quit using and shit hits the fan. Like the IRS, way worse, right? This is where all the consequences that you've been escaping are going to catch up to you. And in order for you to stay sober, you have to go face them, right? And one of the biggest problems is, like you said, the job thing. It's like, even if you were functioning at like a high level, you go to treatment or you get involved in the courts or whatever, you're no longer, like, those job options are pretty much always shut down to you. And so now you're trying to support your family, like working at 7-Eleven or like whatever job you can get, you'll take it. But then 6 months from now, this is what I've seen, is like 6 months from the day you get clean or the day you get out of treatment, you've got this job that you hate, that isn't paying the bills, and you can't support yourself, you can't support your family, you have like all of this stress on you. And I've seen people be like, dude, fuck this.
Life was easier back when I was using.
Mm-hmm. Right? Because it's like, I can completely avoid all of this stuff. And my whole thing around my drug use was, it just was so consistent, right? Like, the most consistency I ever found in my entire life to this day was in drugs. It did the same thing every single time, right? More consistent than people, more consistent than my family, more consistent than anything that I'd ever found, right? And so I just kept going back to it. And at the end, I wanted out desperately, right? And I would have done anything and everything that I possibly could if somebody could have showed me how to do it. But I'm strung out on heroin, homeless, I'm criming, I'm bringing drugs across the border. It was like the whole nine, right? Like, how do you get out of that? Like, the only way that I know how to do it is get arrested and go to prison, right? And the most successful treatment episodes that I've had was long-term state-funded treatment, right? Like,
and that's what you said right there, long-term, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not these 30-day programs that we're doing, these 45 days programs, these 90 days. Our CPS case life is a year. I'm like, do you know how hard it is to get a parent clean, sober, ready to parent, not just from the sobriety standpoint, but from the financial stability?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like all these tickets, and maybe we had to go. I got to go to jail for 2 weeks because I got to sit out my tickets because I can't pay for them. Like all those things that just pile up and get that done in a 1 year time span.
Yeah, I was in treatment for 3 years the last time.
Wow.
I robbed a bank. And my deal was basically, you're going to go to treatment for 3 years or I'm going to lock you up for the rest of your life, kind of thing. Yeah. It wasn't till 18 months where I like had a breakthrough. I was there. I was clean in a program, working, doing the whole, like, every day. And it still took me 18 months before I looked up and I was like, oh, okay. I kind of get it right now. Right?
That light bulb went off.
18 months, right? 28 days does not address anything. And it became standardized, right? Like that is the normal treatment episode, is 28 days, at least in a private pay situation. That's why I tell people, like, the most effective treatment episodes that I participated in was long-term. Salvation Army was I loved Salvation Army, right? But nobody wants to go to Salvation Army. That's like where bums go, right? But dude, it was one of the most effective treatment centers that I ever went to. And
was
it's
that here in
it was in California.
Was in California.
Yeah, but it's the same thing. The programming looks the same. Like any ARC that you go to, any Salvation Army adult rehabilitation center that you go to, the programming is the same, right? And so I went to the ARC in San Bernardino. I spent 7 months there, and I didn't want to leave by the time I had to leave, right? And I left, immediately relapsed, right? It took a lot of time for me to get to that place where I was like, I don't want to use it anymore, right? But it took years.
But that's also because the treatment, when you privatize it and you make it a business, you have to do standards,
right?
Right. Mm-hmm. Let's just think, like, if you had cancer, right? They wouldn't be like, oh, this is the standard, this is what we're going to do, right? No, they
quantifiable metrics.
Yeah, they look at, okay, these are your cancer cells. These are what are all our options, and they make an individualized plan for you. Mm-hmm. And we don't do that in this world, and that's why, I think treatments have gotten away from the disease and just.
I like what you just said. This is something that I talk about all the time. There are buzzwords in the treatment industry, right?
Absolutely.
Individualized care is one of them. Evidence-based. Like, there's a bunch of stuff that people use to, like, kind of signal to people certain things, right? But evidence-based on what? It can't be the efficacy because we're at like a 98.5% failure rate.
Relapse.
Yeah. Individualized care, like individualized treatment plans. I met with a therapist once a week, but everybody did the exact same thing. There was no individualized treatment, right? There is no differentiation between like client A and client B. It's you're here, this is what you do. But we have these buzzwords that we get to throw out there that was standardized by the payers is ultimately what it came down to, is the payers set the pace for what treatment looks like. And so, I mean, I really want to introduce you to Dr. Shah because it's mind-blowing. He came up with a predictive pattern for relapse. He's the only neurologist in the country that's also an addiction medicine specialist. And so the framework that he looks at addiction at, and he's in recovery. He's got like 11 years of sobriety. Okay. And so the framework and the lens that he looks at addiction through is different than everybody else, right? And he's saying that there's a biological component to relapse that's just been completely unaddressed, but also unidentified. And so right now we're building the systems and getting studies made. And like, we're really trying to implement this to say like, he's been working with people for the last 5 years with what he's specifically doing. And he's saying that there's 33% of people that we will work with that will manifest in this specific way. Of those 33% of people, we can keep a large majority of them clean for a calendar year, not just the fiscal year, right? Because you look at like, what is a success rate? Like what is the metrics for success in the treatment industry? It's the fiscal year.
Fiscal year. Yeah.
Right? So if you go into treatment in November and you get out December and you stay clean until January, you stayed clean for a year. You could relapse January 2nd and you stayed clean for a year. If you go to treatment in March and you relapse in February and then you go back to treatment if you go to treatment in February, you relapse in March, and then you go back to treatment in April, but then you stay clean till the next fiscal year. If you can dishonestly not report that first one and say they stayed clean for a fiscal year, right? So we're saying let's keep them clean for calendar years. Let's track that as a metric. And so what we are hoping is that in order to get a 5X valuation on a treatment center today, to get a 5X valuation on your annual revenue when you're selling a treatment center, you need a 5% success rate. 5 out of 100 got to stay clean for that fiscal year.
And the key, you said revenue.
Yeah, right? All this, right? But listen to this. In order to get a 10X valuation, guess what your success rate has to be? 13%.
13%.
13%. So what we're saying is we can use this predictive model and help around the education to keep what we're trying to get to is 45%. If we can keep 45% of our clientele clean, we take that 15% or that 13% that is like a high operating treatment center, right? And add on the 33% that we are going to be looking for, then we're getting up to like 45%, right? And what we're saying is that like the people who have been labeled as treatment resistant or chronic relapsers, these are the people that most people don't want to work with, right? They're like, they may work, they might not. A lot of treatment centers will still take them because that's a pay number. But there is no like hope around whether or not they're probably going to come back, right? And so
they also just do the same thing that they just did right before they relapsed. So we're not doing anything different.
Okay, so that's where we go. That's where we're different. Everybody looks at the relapse as the event, right? We're looking at what happened before the relapse. Like, where is your hyperactivity? Like, where's your amygdala being, like, where is your trauma being reactivated? And what is leading up to your relapse, right? And so a lot of people, another buzzword is relapse prevention. Ultimately, it's just a box. Because when I'm in relapse mode, the last thing I'm thinking about is box breathing.
And you picking up this piece of paper and be like, all right, where do I go next? Where do I go next? Yeah.
Ain't happening.
But it's standard what we do. Like, hey, what's your relapse prevention within your relapse prevention? Even in my drug court, that's something that we make sure that they have. And,
But it's ineffective.
Yeah.
Right? The reality is it looks good on paper and it might help somebody, but wholesale, like the large majority of people, when using becomes a viable option for me, the last thing that I'm thinking about is phone numbers, safety plans, box breathing. And I'm not thinking of none of that. What I'm worried about is how do I find the nearest homeless person to find drugs? That's what I'm worried about. right? And so why don't we address what happens before that, right? And so we're calling it relapse prediction, and it sounds crazy because it's like, how do you predict a relapse? But the reality is everybody's already saying that. Everybody's already saying you relapsed way before you pick up, right? People hear that all the time. But what does that actually mean? Why aren't we addressing that instead of looking at the event, the relapse as the event?
I'm very fascinated with that.
Yeah.
And the reason being is because one of the questions that I ask a lot, so you have kids that just have these explosive episodes and then, and they're like, oh, I said, we don't have bad kids. We just have to figure out what's triggering this type of behavior. I read a book. It was, what's it called? What Happened to You?
Okay.
I think that's what it's called. And in one of the stories in there, he talked about this young man that he was providing treatment for, the therapist, that he would always have these explosive episodes with this one teacher. It was like constant and consistent. And so he started doing some therapy. That child, one day he decided, let me observe the family visit. And so he observed the family visit. And then the next time that there was an episode, he went into there. And he said it was a familiar smell that he triggered.
Yeah.
Right? So during a family visit, that father wore Old Spice.
Oh.
You know what his teacher wore?
Old Spice.
Old Spice. Whenever the teacher would come close and try to help him with something, that Old Spice triggered the trauma. And so he asked that teacher, hey, do me a favor, don't wear Old Spice for 1 week. Let's see if we have these same episodes.
No.
And he's like, I want you to do the same thing. And I want you to, and he said he could go, he could talk to them in every way that child used to be triggered just by removing the Old Spice, stop that trigger. And it's the same concept. And I never thought about it in the drug, relapse or prediction world. It's the same thing. Like if we can get back to what's triggering that and get to that point, that can be effective because that was very effective for that child. And they were able to really have therapeutic breakthroughs by just removing a smell.
Yeah.
Right? The same concept. That's really, I like that.
Yeah. The cool thing is, like, because of all of the formal training that he's done around neurology, he is singling it. I mean, he's got it down to like the area of the brain that is it's the amygdala, right? Like we all know that is the fear center of the brain, right? What he's saying is that there's scarring. They identified a bunch of scarring on the amygdala for returning vets from the Iraq War, from Afghanistan and Iraq. And what happens is there's a hyperactivity based on a misfiring. And what happens is it ends up looking like a mini seizure where it starts a hyperactivity in the basolateral amygdala, and then it goes out to the rest of it, and then it starts this spiraling that it like ends up touching all of these different parts of the brain slowly. It happens over a 5 to 7 day period. But it's a Jacksonian march where it just slowly cascades. And so it's like you'll hear people say you relapsed way before you picked up, right? What does that actually mean? What it means is that your trauma has been retriggered and it's subconscious. You don't know what's going on. But it's funny because one of the things that you end up doing is you drive faster, you walk faster, you talk faster. Like there are things that are indicative to there is
coming.
Yeah. And so if you can watch these things and you can identify their patterns way before they ever will, because you hear these stories where it's like, I don't know, everything was going great. And next thing you know, I was at the dope man's house. Like, I just don't know what happened. And it's like, a lot of people look at them and be like, you're lying, whatever. But it's like, no, there is this completely unidentified, and self cannot critique self. Right? It's really hard for somebody, especially with low emotional maturity, which a lot of addicts have, and like a lot of identification problems. Like as an addict myself, it was really hard for me to identify emotions in myself. It was really hard for me to identify issues that I had with certain things. Where like some people may not even have to identify these things, but I know for me, when I got clean, I had to stop listening to rap. Right? Like it was something that I had to do. Like most people never have that. Like they could just listen to whatever and it doesn't really, but for me, if I listen to rap, I start to get into a mindset and things start changing over who knows how long, but then I can see it and feel it in myself or like weeks later if I continued to, like I'm looking at banks crazy and I'm like talking to my wife crazy and like, but how many people are like able to point back to it and be like, oh, it's because I started listening to rap.
Just some rap music.
Right. And so with this, what we're saying is identify the trauma. And I've got presentations on this stuff. I would love to share it with you.
Oh, absolutely. I'd love to read.
He's a genius. I love working with him. He's our medical director. And so we are getting ready to implement a study within Harmony Grove to really prove the model, right? And ultimately, the goal around it is a couple of years from now, 5 years from now, is that we can go to everybody and say, look, treatment is supposed to help people. And ultimately, if you're not helping people, you're hurting people. And if we look at outcomes of what's going on in the treatment industry today, I would venture to say that we are hurting more people than we're helping. And so we'll be able to go to them and say, look, we proved this over here at Harmony Grove, and we've quantified it. Like, we've kept these people clean. We've helped the quality of life improve. We've upped standards of clinical integrity. We've done all this stuff around this model. And yeah, I'd love for you to meet this guy.
Oh, no.
It's like one of my good friends.
Definitely somebody I'd want to meet and talk to and pick his brain about some stuff that we're doing in our courtroom as well.
He is willing to come and talk to you guys too.
Oh, great.
Yeah. He has an hour presentation that he does. And so if you guys ever want to set that up, I can set it up for you guys.
Oh, no, definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
Trust me when you'll get that call from Tamisha.
Okay.
When we're done.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, the court systems it's a necessary thing in society, right? Like, there has to be a punitive arm. It just is what it is. But one of the things, like, when you talk about individual problems, right? Like addiction, mental health, stuff like this. I think it's crazy, the notion that people think that you can systemically, societally fix an individual problem, like on a systemic level. Like, do you know what's going on in California right now?
I don't really.
There's a $24 billion scandal with a B. They were going to fix the homeless problem, right? They dumped $24 billion into it. 5 years later, so they started off with 32,000 homeless people in California. $24 billion later, guess how many there are?
I would venture to say more than 30.
They quadrupled it, 168,000. Yeah, they quadrupled it. So when I look at that, I ask people, like, how do people really think that they're going to try to fix an individual problem socially? Like, the way that my recovery worked and the way that I see it be most effective is that you got to get down to the person, right? And you definitely can't just throw money at it. That sounds crazy to me, but it is what it is.
I know people think that, oh, well, we just need to build more housing, then we won't have any homeless. But my kids, when they go downtown, they do, you go downtown, you'll see homeless, and they ask, like, why are they living on the street? And I'll always tell them, like, I don't know why that person's living on the street. Everybody has a different reason.
Mm-hmm.
Some people have homes that they can go to, and they're just, they don't have the mental stability. Some people, know they can go to the shelter, but they don't have the capacity to follow those rules. Yeah. And, and then you have the drugs, and you have, other factors as well. Not everybody's story is the same, and you can't fix that with one solution. Yeah. And I agree that, you can't just throw money at it and that's going to fix the problem, because it's not. Mm-hmm. They can build 100,000 homes for those people to go to, but that doesn't mean that they're ready to be in that home.
Yeah. I was homeless for years in San Diego, and I have probably either done drugs with, during that time at least, done drugs with or hung out with everybody that was homeless downtown, every single person at one time or another. And I've had this conversation over and over and over with them. Like, maybe not this conversation with all of them, because they say there's about 2,500 homeless people downtown San Diego. But I've interacted with the large majority of them. Mm-hmm. And there was always these conversations that would come up around, I would never want to do anything different. Like, the lifestyle of being homeless is a lifestyle. There's a community. And I would say of that 2,500, maybe 100 of them were actually mentally ill. Were like, they didn't know any better, or they couldn't do anything different. The rest of us all wanted to be homeless. Maybe we didn't get there that way. We're like my wife and I were like, let's just be homeless, because we're already hanging out down here. Like, this is expensive. I'm getting us kicked out every 2 months of our apartments and like losing money. And so we were like, okay, let's just be homeless. Like, F it, right? Yeah. I'm sure not everybody ended up down there like that, but by the time you get acclimated to it and you're like comfortable with it, that's like, in our head, it was like, as long as I'm using, I would never want to do anything. I would never want to have the responsibility of apartments or bills or anything ever again. And so,
and that's the difference of throwing money is not going to fix that.
definitely not.
Right?
Definitely not. That's a whole mindset, like, and it's a lifestyle. And I think people try to capture that level of freedom. They'll like go to the mountains for like a month or whatever, but it's like, you got to go back.
You got to go back.
But like,
right to the grind.
Yeah. But being homeless, it was like, my wife and I talk about it all the time, where it's like the level of freedom that you find with no responsibility there's something about it, right? Like if we could do that where like you can bottle that feeling and like sell it to people, we'd be billionaires, But yeah, it's a hard thing to like try to look at and say like it's fixable. I don't know if it is fixable. There's been homeless people since forever probably. Yeah. Right? But yeah, how many kids come into your like that you help or that you see that are homeless?
Homeless when they initially come in?
Either way.
So I'd actually say that's not a big bulk of them at all. Right now, I just hear what we call permanent managing conservatorship cases. So the whatever led, like the original reason for the removal, that decision's already been made. Mm-hmm. But I go back to like when I was practicing law before I became a judge. I mean, I probably could count on one hand how many cases they came in just because they were homeless.
Somebody told me the other.
Yeah, you can't have that exception just because they're homeless that the kids are being neglected and abused. Like that's not always the case.
Huh.
Now, as a society, we don't want that. We don't want the kids living out there. We want the kids in different situations.
Yeah.
I mean, there's other factors that you have to look at as well. Like it's not just like, oh, this mom and these two kids are homeless, so therefore that's abuse and neglect and we need to remove your children. That's what I'm saying. Like there's other things. So those type of cases, that mom's going to get other help before we come into the system.
Yeah.
And then usually there's other reasons besides, like it's not the homelessness that led to the removal. It's the other factors that came in, like homeless and using. And the kids being neglected. And, so it's not just, that's why I just want to make sure it's not purely you are homeless, so therefore we're going to remove your children.
For sure. I agree with that. Like, I know that there's circumstantially people that end up homeless. And I wouldn't say that that is problematic as far as, like, neglect or abuse, right? It's where the other factors come in, like actual abuse or actual drug use or, like, stuff like that, neglect. But somebody, I was on a podcast, and somebody commented that it was like, the statistic that he said was so crazy. But it was like 35% of all homeless people are teenagers.
I actually wouldn't argue with that.
Really?
And I don't have like the data in front of me, but I mean, so because I work with the PMC population, I work with a large amount of kids that age out of care. And there is a misperception about CPS that, kids age out of care and then they're just on their own and they have to figure it out. Mm-hmm. That's actually not the case.
Really?
But you have to be able to reach that teenager who's now 18, who's had, restrictions for however long they've been in care.
Yeah.
You have to reach them to have an understanding, like, I know now you're 18 and you can make your own decisions. And, but they're still in this CPS world help, right? So we have what's called supervised independent living programs, which is designed just for 18 to 21. And it's called supervised, but we all say there's nothing, they're not supervised. It is teenagers living in a house. We have like a dorm style one to Pelchin. We have them on college campuses. So it's, they have a case manager that will check on them, depending on their level of, that the youth comes in as. There's enhanced case management and there's just regular. So enhanced case management, they'll probably see their case manager, speak to their case manager a couple times a week. If they're not on enhanced case management, they may see that case manager once a month. So their housing is paid for. Their only requirements is go to school or work.
Okay.
And it's work 80 hours a month.
Oh, wow.
So you got to work part-time or you got to be in school, and if you're graduating from high school already, then you got to be in college for at least 6 hours. So it's all like, hey, we want to see your life improve, and we're going to give you 3 more years to do it, but also give you the level of freedom that you may not have in a foster home or another type of home. But then you're also putting some 18-year-olds and 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds together, and not everybody's ready for that.
For sure.
Freedom, but that option's still available. And then they opened up several years ago. They opened them up on college campuses as well. And so it's not like, oh, these are CPS kids on college campuses. It's what the CPS is saying. Hey, if you go to this university that has agreed to have a SIL program on their campus, we'll pay for your housing and your meal plan. And then CPS already pays for their college. Wow. And so then they have the opportunity to not have to worry about, where am I sleeping tonight? Like, I can go to college.
How come
Unfortunately, yeah.
I've never heard of this.
Yeah. So I will say, because I get that a lot, like, oh, CPS, you guys just like drop these kids off in the street and they're 18. Does that happen? Yeah. And they don't drop them off in the street at 18. But do we have kids that leave at 18? Absolutely. Part of what I do is really try to work and engage the teenagers, bring them to court, have conversations. Like, if you're getting ready to turn 18, you haven't graduated from high schools. We all know most 18-year-olds have not graduated from high school, right? They'll graduate sometime in their 18th year, or they'll graduate, at 19. That's around all of America. But for our kids, like, you turn 18 the October of your senior year, and then all of a sudden, like, you get to decide if you're going to remain in your foster home. And, I'm tired of, I've dealt with y'all for 10 years, like, I'm out and I'm going to go over here, but like, hey, we still need to get you through high school. Like, let's get through high school. And so that's conversations that I have with my teenagers all the time. Like, what is your plan? Extend care, at least till you graduate from high school, because that will give you like a baseline for success. But we have the kids that do end up leaving and they're homeless. And I've tried to create an environment in my courtroom where they're comfortable coming back and having hearings even after they left care. And I did have a young lady recently that, we talked about her being homeless, living in a tent, and the other kids that were still, around them. And I tried to, encourage the caseworker to continue to work with them. They have PAL workers to continue to work with them. But when you tell me 35% of homeless is youth, and I bet you if you start pulling that number, high level of them were in foster care at some point.
When I saw this comment, because of my experience, like, I just see it through my experience, and I was like, I never saw homeless teenagers. And of all places, you would think, because San Diego's like paradise compared to here. The weather's perfect.
Gorgeous.
Right? And so, like, I didn't have like the extreme heat or the extreme cold. It is cold right now.
It is.
Right? Never liked that. And so, and there were like people that would travel all over the country and then end up in San Diego during the winter. Anyway, I was like, there's no way that it's that high, because I had never really experienced that. But when it comes to these kids that are involved in the system, and like, especially as they're growing up, how many of them end up with substance use issues?
So right now, to me, in the last couple of years, it's a lot higher than it was when I first started doing this. And it is the vaping and the THC vapes that were. And
are you guys qualifying that as substance abuse?
Absolutely not. Okay. So I have a program, CPS. It's called CPRC, CPS Rehabilitation and Prevention Drug Court.
Okay.
And as part of that, we're trying to really hard to get our program off the ground, where we're working with this group of teenagers. And when we bring them in, the first thing I say is, I'm not telling you you're an addict. I'm not telling you this is substance abuse. I'm telling you, like, let's find another way. Like, let's start figuring out what we need to do to get you to, apologize,
you're good,
to stop using. Right? So why are you going to school and using your THC vape? Is it because your friends or guys are all in the bathroom and everybody's doing it, so you're doing it? Do you feel like you need to do it? Is it, we want to dive into that.
Yeah.
And then we want to work on their, the area that all teenagers need to really work on, which is their activity level, getting outside, right? Their sleep and their sleep patterns. Oh, yeah. And then their eating, right? If you're constantly junk in, junk out, and trying to, show them that there's other paths to why we're going down this path and how can we do it more like a little holistic. Yeah. We're not talking about, I tell them, like, I am not sitting there saying, like, you're using your vape pen and therefore you're a drug addict, or you're smoking marijuana and therefore you're a drug addict. That's not what we're here about. I know that's what the title is, because, we have funding. Yeah. Right? And the use is part of the funding, and they are using. Like, that's definitely, that's what's happening. But, to sit there and say we want to label a 15-year-old, 16-year-old, 18-year-old as an addict, like absolutely not. We have an opportunity to change your trajectory and for you to understand like what this could lead to and how we can get you, maybe you're trying to calm down and relax. Well, let's work on these other techniques. Like maybe you're trying to just hang out and be cool. Well, let's talk about maybe we need to look at another set of friends.
Yeah.
And let's, and then the concept is we're going to build a community around them and then just give them more outlets and understanding. A lot of times they're just stuck in this foster home and they're really not happy. So let's find another way to create some happiness. And so, and I know you don't like the individualized treatment, but that for us, like,
no, I do
mean individualized. When I say it, like this kid needs this. Like I see what your pattern are. You come home, you get onto that game, and then you're doing this until this time, and then you're walking outside, you're smoking, and you're coming back. Like, what is that pattern, and how can we break that?
Yeah,
for you?
That I do like individualized treatment, right? What I don't like, what I don't like is that it was hijacked as a signal and a box that gets checked.
Yes,
because that's supposed to mean something, and if it isn't definitionally meeting that criteria, then it's not individualized treatment. What it is a box that you're checking, and so individualized care, that's great. Like that's what it should be, but it shouldn't be. The way that it's done today in the treatment world, it just blows my mind because it's like we say individualized treatment care, but what it really means is that you are asked a bunch of questions that you individually answer, and then you kind of like tailor make this plan to try. Like ultimately, what it is you tailor make this plan on paper so that in practice you can do what everybody else is doing. There is no, in reality, that translates into like an individualized plan. It's just on paper.
It's on paper.
That's it. And so like around what you're talking about, especially with kids, when let's see, in the early 2000s, treatment was still fairly foreign to a lot of people, right? Like treatment's been around for a long time, but treatment the way that we look at it today, 2008, right? Parity, the ACA, like that's where it really kind of got its stronghold and real takeoff in like the mainstream. And so when I was a kid, I had one friend that went to treatment, right? His name was Matt Marshita. He's overdosed and died since then. But he had a keychain that said rehab is for quitters, right? And I was like, that is so smart, right? Like, and I wanted to use that as like part of the branding for Harmony Grove, and everybody was like, no, definitely not. But but that was the kind of like the messaging and like the way that people thought about it, like at least for the kids that I was around. And it was cool to slam heroin on the weekends, and it was cool to like be doing crazy shit that like was super damaging and ultimately set me on like a crazy path. But when you're talking about kids that are already at risk, right? I was at a meeting the other day. It was like a month ago maybe, and they were like talking about how to talk to kids that are already in situations that they're probably being geared for like a fucked up situation. And it was like, I heard the craziest shit. It was like, hook them with a vision and like, whatever. And I was like, dude, why don't you tell them the truth? Like, why don't you just put somebody in front of them and be like, yo, this is how fucked up it can get.
This is the path.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I'll go in there and tell them like, look, you can continue down this road, get involved in gangs, get involved in this and do that, and like think that you're doing something or like trying to make. That's a big problem too, right? Is the money aspect around criminality. It pays. Crime pays. It just doesn't pay for a long time, and it doesn't pay well. Like when you factor in all the time that you got to do, right? I think in 50 Cent's movie, he was like, he like took all the money that he made and then like averaged it out against all the prison time that he did. And he was like, I made like $5 an hour. It's like, yeah. Doesn't pay well. But there is that allure, right? There is like you look at like growing up on a block or like whatever, like who's got it and how'd they get it? It's like, okay, well they've got it. Like they've got the cars and the girls and the friends and the money and all this stuff. And it's like, how do I get that? Well, I got to do what they do. Right. But like, why, if you can set the negative example, why can't you set the positive example too, instead of like all of this fluffy language around, like hook them with the vision. Maybe I'm missing the boat here, but like whose vision? Like my vision for the kid, like try to get them to like think outside the box.
And if you think an adult can give a kid a vision,
I don't know.
They'll run the opposite direction.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
I mean, when I work, and not just the teenagers that are, that are using and we're trying to get help. Because so in the CPS world, right? If you go home to your foster home and you're using vape at school and you're, engaging in that, guess what? You're out your placement. You're on to the next thing, right? And it has a lot to do with, the rules and regulations. Child placement agencies don't want that.
They can't allow them to do it either.
Right?
Right. Okay.
So, it's really hard to get some child placement agencies and some foster homes to continue like, hey, like we can still work with this. And because here's the reality. If your kid is using, the first time they come home high or they bring marijuana in your home, are you kicking them out? Or are we trying to figure out what's going on and try to get them help?
I mean, I get where you're going. Mm-hmm. I personally think that, like, depending on the kid, kicking them out would probably be the best thing. But
I said the first time, though. You would do it the first time?
Depending on the kid.
Depending on the kid.
The most effective thing my parents ever did was kick me out. Yeah.
Was it right away, though, or did they try to help you first?
I mean, it was pretty quick. But I was the oldest of 10 kids.
10 kids.
So they couldn't, have that.
Have that around.
It was very, very short lived, the amount of time that I was like really fucking up between then and getting kicked out. They did it pretty quick. And I think it was we're just going to scare them straight kind of thing. But I found my way pretty quick and like how I can survive.
And that path went a different direction.
It did, but I wouldn't change it. Like, because I ended up in this chair.
Yes.
Right? But once again, like, this isn't normal. Normal is, and I really should be in prison for the rest of my life. That would have been normal. I got lucky, right? Like, things all lined up. I mean, you either believe in God or you believe in luck, right? You can't believe in both, right? They're contradictory, right? And so I say luck because that's just the language that we use. And so I redefined luck as preparation with good timing, right? But yeah, I got lucky.
You got lucky on that.
Really did. And that's not normal. But I think depending on the kid, I think sometimes drastic measures it just depends on the kid. Drastic measures should not be the first thing with most kids. But for me, like with who I am, that was the most effective thing that they could have done at the time.
And so that goes also to like the individual for each one.
For sure.
As opposed to like the standard of what it is. Like this is, you're going to do this and then we're going to put you in an RTC or we're going to put you in, which residential treatment center, same thing on that treatment part, right? There's
right.
Like this, I always put the residential treatment center in quotes. But a lot of people that I've known and got used to, when their kids start down a path, like their immediate response is not to kick them out the house, it's try to get them help.
Yeah.
And so what we're trying to change the concept with doing CPRC, especially with our younger, with our teenagers, is like if we can get them, because what happens if every time they're kicked out, then how do we get them any help? Because like now they're packing up and they're moving to the next house. Okay. And then they bring the vape with them, they catch it, they kick them out, and then we're packing up and we're moving to the next house and we're moving. And so difference too is they're in care.
For sure.
CPS has a responsibility to continue to place them.
For sure.
And so our cycle will look a little bit different because you got kicked out and you figured out your own path. Mm-hmm. A kid in CPS care gets kicked out, and if they
it doesn't matter where they go, they're going to get found and they're brought back.
And when we had there's an obligation to take care of our kids.
Yeah.
So I do have kids that have AWOL, and we haven't seen them again.
Okay.
And but they're on the website for missing exploded children. There's just a special investigator looking for them. Like we're trying to bring them back in because we also know that our kids that go AWOL is a highly high probability that they're going to get sex trafficked as well.
For sure.
So we know that, and so there are eyes trying to locate them and bring them back in and get them help. But if I have kids that constantly get kicked out of their placements because they're smoking marijuana, then we we will just continue a cycle and never actually get them to have the understanding of like, how can we break this cycle? And we need to do that with stability of placement first.
So another reason why, it's because of our difference in lenses, right? One of the things that I always see that is a downstream effect of the parent trying to look for options around helping a situation is it ends up starting a codependency cycle and an enabling cycle where,
I can see that, yes.
Where, I know that everybody starts using for whatever reason, but I've seen it where down the line, the crux of all of the problem is the codependency. It is the enabling, where it's like if the parents weren't there to catch them every time they got arrested or in trouble or needed a place to sleep or needed $5 because they're sick or whatever, if that wasn't happening, they probably would have got clean a long time ago, right? And so definitely the lens that we're looking through kind of dictates that difference. Because I think, especially for some of the clients that I've worked with recently, it was like, I'm telling their parents, cut them off. Like, stop. Supporting this. You're negatively enforcing negative behavior. Like, you are enabling this and you are contributing to the death of your child. I tell them, like, when you take responsibility for somebody, you take responsibility from them. And now that's on you. Mm-hmm. Right? But yeah, with your situation, very different, right? There is, because they can't allow them to do drugs in their house, that like they can lose their ability to be a foster center, right?
Yeah, and then it affects everybody else in the home. Mm-hmm. And then where does everybody go?
Right.
When that home gets shut down.
So that makes sense. That does make sense to me. So is this how group home, like, do kids end up in group homes because of cycles like this?
So I will say there isn't a group home in Texas anymore. That's a federal lawsuit. So the group home setting has technically gone away. So we have.
Is that a nationwide?
No, it's something specific to Texas. So we have, so that technically we don't. I gotta put technically. So we have called residential treatment centers. Okay. Right. And then we have general residential operation facilities. And then we have qualified QRTPs, qualified residential treatment programs. Okay. So they're just, everything just gets rebranded, right? So foster homes do have a limit. Like they can't, before foster homes can have, waivers to have 8 kids, 10 kids. Mm-hmm. So that's now been limited down to, I believe the number 6 for in a regular foster home. And then, so a lot of times when we have kids that are going to be using, we're going to be putting in an RTC, right? Mm-hmm. Or one of these other type of placements. But as you probably see when you go into the juvenile system, which is, I'm curious what your thoughts are, because I always talked about when I have these kids that enter in RTCs at 8, 9, 10 years old, right? So they don't have a mom, dad, parental figure, right? They have rotating staff. Mm-hmm. But you put them in a home with 12 kids, say, that kind of all have the same similar behaviors. Yeah. Like, what are we creating? We're creating.
Have you read Lord of the Flies?
Institutionalized effect.
Yeah. Oh, no, for sure.
Right?
Yeah. Kids are vicious. When you gear them for institutionalized thinking, and we are tribal animals, right? And so they are constantly looking for their power dynamics, and especially when there's no parental, like when they are the ones that are deciding who's cool and who's not, and who like lives and who dies and all that, they will, right? Mm-hmm. Kids are extremely good at like being tribal. One of the things around kids, because Tamisha's probably told you, but we're down the line somewhere going to be starting an adolescent program, right? And so I visited a bunch of the adolescent programs here in Houston, and it's amazing to me like how young some of these kids are.
I'm kind of surprised you said a bunch, because I don't feel like we have a whole lot
like
of
4
substance. Like it's really hard to get our kids.
Oh, so these were also mental health.
Oh, okay.
Mental health and substance. Yeah, I think I only went to 1 that was a substance. The other 3 were mental health, and then it was still mental health, but they had substance.
Yes, because a lot of time that's going to go hand in hand.
Yeah, but so I think about like when I was a kid, right? And there was 10 of us. Like when I was 13 on my 13th birthday, the last kid was born, and we were vicious with each other, and we were siblings, right? But then you add in like all these other dynamics around like how did they end up there in the first place? What was the trauma? What was the adverse like experiences? And like I'm sure all these kids are scoring super high in their ACEs and like
Definitely.
the ACEs is interesting to me. And how accurately like that can indicate like what's going to happen. Because I never knew about ACEs until I think 4 years ago, and I scored 10. And yeah. And you look at like my background, and like I'm probably the only person in my family that scores a 10, but it was because of the situation that I was being raised in at the time. But when you look at kids' ACEs and then you factor in like their background, it's like, oh my gosh, how do we help this person that's going to evolve into me, right? Like, how do you stop that cycle? I have no clue how you stop it other than like, somebody said it the other day. There were like mentorship programs for kids who are in these like high-risk kids is massively important. And so I have a mentor. He was a Navy SEAL. And then after the SEALs, he went into the French Foreign Legion. And so he mentors adults, right? Like, and he works with adults on their physical health and their mental health and all this stuff, right? And how important that is for me today, like, it is so important for me to like have somebody that I respect to like kind of keep me on the rails about, because I've got crazy ideas too. It's like I could rant all day about all whatever, right? And it's like, no, like I need to like stay on track, right?
Yeah, somebody to kind of
to rein me in.
you in.
Mm-hmm. And so high accountability, but the importance is they got to respect you. They've got to look up to you. They got to want what you have in some way or another in order for them to even care about what you're saying. So how do you do that? Like, you've got all these like football programs in LA. Have you seen what's going on with that? I think it's called the
You're talking about like the youth
the gridiron program. Okay.
No, I haven't.
So there's a guy. He's gonna go do the rest of his life in prison, right? And he started this like youth mentorship program, and like really what was going on is he was recruiting for a gang in these youth mentorship programs, like his big Crip gang in LA.
Yeah. Wow.
And so it's like, man, well, yeah, no wonder that was so successful. Like you were using it as a farm to take these kids into like into a gang.
And that's when you're saying mentor, that's one thing, Tamisha and I talk about is like, that needs to be a big part of our program for our youth in that, on our CPRC side. But we have to be so careful because it's such a vulnerable population.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and a lot of times the most effective mentors is a mentor that has an understanding what they've been through, understanding of the path that they can go down. Mm-hmm. I'm never going to get those people approved to be able to work with my youth.
For sure.
Because they have to go through their background checks and everything like that. And so it's really like, how are we going to balance what I know that they need, which is somebody that can rein them in, give them a modality they can respect, because you're just not telling me what to do. You've been where I've been, and you've come this direction, and you know where I could go. And being able to balance that, because I think that's a very big part. Now, on our adult side, we can do that, right? Because it's different. On our youth side, it really is different. So I'd love to pick your brain about some ideas and suggestions that you have
Let me pose something to you. Historically, throughout all of man's history, there has always been like a coming of age ceremony thing that we've done, right? Like the Spartans, they would send them out into the woods and they would go fight wolves and like survive, right? And like up until recently, there was like different things that we did for men, at least, where like there was a transition thing that you went and did, whether it was a day or a week or a month or whatever, that like you would go into this as a boy and you would come out of it as a man. And there is nothing like that anymore. And we don't have transition periods where boys become men anymore. And when you look at like things like the Boy Scouts and stuff like that, it's like that shit got fucked up.
Yeah.
And so I think, especially with the epidemic of silent suffering, have you heard of this?
Yes, I've heard about silent suffering. Yes.
Okay, so there is like a movement that people are talking about. It's called the epidemic of silent suffering in men, where we just don't communicate our trauma. We don't communicate our needs. We don't communicate in any healthy humans in general today don't communicate in any healthy way anyway. But men who cannot control their emotions will be controlled by their emotions. And they are dangerous because they are being controlled by something they have no control over. It's explosive. Like, we can hurt people, we can hurt ourselves. It becomes a problem.
And they don't have the understanding of what's happening.
There is low emotional quotient. There is no formal training on like what it means to be a healthy man. There is no like examples that are being set anymore. Like in the home, historically, it was like, my dad works, he supports his family, he does this or whatever. Like, that doesn't happen anymore. And so my suggestion that I've talked to a couple of people about recently is like, there needs to be some kind of coming of age ceremony or like ritual that boys start to participate again in, where like, so in the Mormon culture, do you know what Mormons are, right?
I know what Mormons are. I'm not familiar with the culture, but I do know what Mormons are.
So in Mormon culture, when you're 18, you go on a 2-year mission for the church. You go out there, they put you in charge of like 4 other people that rotates. You go out there and like, you live on your own, right? You have a roommate, you're out there preaching the gospel, but you're not allowed to talk to your family. Like, and the way that it's looked at in the church is you leave as a boy and you come back as a man, right? And you look at like success rates and outcomes for these people, and it's like you're gearing them for the responsibility of manhood through this ritualistic thing that ultimately it benefits the church, but it's really benefiting these kids, right? We don't have that anymore. And ultimately, the thing that I see that is the closest to that is gang culture. And you see a lot of kids getting lost to gang culture because you jump off the porch, right? Like, there was that moment where you became a man. Like, you get that first gun, you sell your first sack, whatever it is, and now you are respected, and a lot of people are gravitating towards that. And so if we can flip that somehow, whatever it is, and systemically create this like coming of age thing again, I think it would be super beneficial for boys. I don't know how that would translate for females. I'm sure, I'm just not educated on like what that looked like before. Probably, marriage and like childbirth and stuff like that, like back in the day or whatever. But like, you can look at it historically, and there was always something that boys did when it was like, and you look at like Hispanic culture, it's like the quinceañeras, and like Jewish culture with the bar mitzvahs and stuff like that. Like, yeah. But those are culturally locked down, right? Like, you can't have like be a young black kid and go have a quinceañera.
Yes.
Right? Like, you can't be like a Mexican kid and like go have a bar mitzvah.
Bar mitzvah, yeah.
So I don't know. I think I'm a man, and so my concern coming up like in these next few years is going to be like, how are we either failing or helping the youth, like in the next generations, and what is it that we're actually doing to help them? I don't think we're doing much right now, and so the bar is really low as far as like what we can do, because if we do anything, we're doing better than we were yesterday.
What we were doing before, yeah.
Yeah.
And a big part with the youth as well. And so again, anytime we're talking about sobriety, it's willpower too. Like, they have to want it.
Yeah.
Right? So I 100% agree with that. We're not going to change a kids if there's not a desire. Like, the desire's not there, then, because kids will also appease adults as well. Like, okay, sure, yeah, I'm going to do it. I'm going to peace. But there's no real change there too. But another issue that we have a lot with our getting any type of adolescence treatment is if they don't sign on that dotted line,
willingness to participate,
right? Then you eliminate the services that are available.
Yeah.
And so it's also creating a path that, okay, so I can't, maybe this kid really does need to be in a drug treatment program, but they're not willing to go, so therefore they can't go into the program, even though we know they're teenagers, and we can control other aspects, but we can't control this aspect. So what kind of programs can we put together that is not necessarily like a drug treatment, but a coming of an understanding that, hey, maybe you do need a little bit more than what you're doing.
Yeah. One of the things around youth programs,
balancing that.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the scary things about youth programs that I've seen, that I know people this has happened to, is like, you go into these youth programs and it's an education system for criminality, exposure to drugs. And it's like, you got this kid that goes in there that maybe he was smoking weed or whatever and like stole a candy bar and got busted or whatever. And when he comes out, he is
using hard drugs,
trying to find a gun, like looking for a gang, whatever. And it's like, we created that monster.
Absolutely.
Like, we did that punitively, trying to punish this kid. And now we've like completely re-geared his brain for something, because it's so attractive, because there is no other thing that's equal to it on a positive, like on the positive side of the scale. I participated in Boy Scouts when I was a kid. It was super effective as far as, like I know knots today that I would have never known, otherwise, and like had a bunch of experiences and like a bunch of camping and like experiences that I really appreciate that I had. It didn't do anything for me though, like once I started doing drugs, right? And so it's like, how do you balance that? Because the scale is tipped so heavy on the negative side. Like, gangs are a really powerful force in a young man's life. Like, if you don't have belonging, if you don't have like love, if you don't have those parental figures or like men that you respect, it is really easy to go to like towards that. They accept you with open arms.
They do.
And it's like,
and they make a very attractive world to be in.
And it is an attractive for a young man, like anywhere from 10 even to 15, which is the prime age for like attracting kids to gangs, right? Girls, money, power, respect, like access, all that stuff. And it's like, you've got to find a really, really good alternative. Like, what does that look like? I don't know. But one of the things that I've always thought about was like military conscription, like where you look at, there's some Middle Eastern countries where it's like, in order to even participate in society, you have to go to the military for 2 years.
2 years. Yeah.
Right?
My dad's a huge proponent of that.
I think that would be super effective. Like, you learn to love country, you learn to be responsible, and it's like, and really I looked at that because it's like, this whole Mormon thing works really well for a lot of people. And they're just going out there and they're opening a Bible and getting doors slammed in their face all day. Right?
That's very true, yeah.
So
standing on the corner and trying and people ignoring us.
Yep.
Yeah.
People spitting on them and yelling at them and all that, right? And it's like, they come back just really well geared for rejection and responsibility, and like they've worked well with people and like all this stuff. But the other part is, you got to be 18, right? A lot of these kids need answers at 14, 13, 12. It's like, how do you do that? I would, at some point in my life, be really interested in like participating in trying to develop a program for kids that are heading down the path that I went down. And now my home situation wasn't exactly what they're going through, because I had both parents in my home. The difference was I had exposure to things that they didn't really even realize I was being exposed to because of where I was living and other family members. And like, I was molested as a kid by a family member. And then it was exposed to drugs at a really young age by the same family member and a bunch of the other ones, and it was like, my parents probably had no clue what was going on. I know they had no clue because they just found out for the first time less than 2 years ago that happened. Wow. Right? And so, and that's a whole nother piece of the puzzle with these kids, is like the sexual abuse, right? Dr. Shaw talks about the levels of trauma and all this stuff, right? And different patterns that are created around certain traumas, and like sexual trauma, physical abuse, neglect. All of these things have different, like the way that it gears the mind. You can watch somebody and be like, oh, this person was neglected, or this person was physically abused, or this person was sexually abused, based on just the way that they interact with their reality, right? And it's like, Dr. Shaw can't say this because he's a doctor, but I'll say it all day. I would guess that people who are doing hard drugs, probably close to 100% of them have been sexually abused in one way or another. Whether they're willing to talk about it or not, it's almost 100%.
Whether they understand it was abuse, because they can also pervert their mind.
That's another thing.
I wasn't abused. I chose to do it. This was a choice, when the reality was no. There's a power dynamic there that you won't let go.
Yeah, It's pervasive, and it's really crazy that we ended up here like as a society where this is normal. Like this is really normal. Like the stuff that we're talking about, like it isn't normal always to end up in a CPS court or anything like that, but these are normal experiences for a lot of people.
And that's what people don't realize. Like these experiences are happening in a lot of different homes, and just CPS is just a very small, grand scheme, the size of the state of Texas, as many cases come in. Like it's really small.
Yeah.
And it is happening in a lot of different homes in a lot of different ways.
Oh, yeah.
And, we're just out here trying to do the best we can do to help the kids that come through our system.
Yeah. Yeah. I would probably venture to say that like you're just catching like the extreme cases because the rest of them don't qualify or like there's no red flags, no alarms going off. But like really what's going on in the homes is scary.
It's scary, yeah. Because, unless there's a referral called in, everybody else is going to go straight under the radar.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And, there's the power dynamics that you're talking about. And if that kind of stuff is happening, there's a predatory component of it where a lot these people understand how to keep people under their thumb.
Oh, absolutely.
So they're not going to talk about it. Right? I literally didn't talk about it till I was 33. And, never realized that was contributing to what I was doing. Never realized it ever until after 3 years, 3 prison terms, like lost marriages, like the whole thing. And it was like 33 years into it. Like, let's see, it was 28 years after it happened where I finally like admitted it and then did the work, like went through like really intense therapy about it for like a year and a half and like really figured out what was going on. And ultimately, one of the realizations and like things that we came to around the therapy was I wasn't using because of it. I was using because of other stuff. But it definitely like was one of the first dominoes to fall. And kind of to go back to what you were talking about is there is a genetic predisposition for addiction, mental illness, like all of this stuff, right? And so Dr. Shaw says that nature loads the gun and nurture pulls the trigger.
Pulls trigger. Yeah.
So yeah, it's a hard situation. And this is the 4th biggest city in the country, right? And I would probably one of the biggest court systems in the country too, right?
Yeah, it's on the larger scale.
Yeah, it's well, I'm glad that we have people like you, for sure.
Thank you. Just trying to do the best I can do for the kids of Harris County.
Yeah.
And the parents too, because I'm not going to dismiss. Like I have parents that come through the court too, and like we want to work with everybody. Like we want to get the parents where they need to be and the kids that they could be. So our goal is to have them just be able to get through this system and have some successes on that, the back end.
Mm-hmm.
And we want people to be productive and we want them to have healthy lifestyles. And this blurb, or this, it's not a blurb, but this like
happenstance.
This happenstance in their life is just something that they build on, right? Like you said, like if your parents didn't kick you out, you didn't go down that path. Like that's who's created who you are, right? Mm-hmm. This is where they are. And let's see what we can get you to where you want to go. And not just let this hold you back. And maybe you don't have to go all the way down the route of homelessness and prison and stuff like that. And we can help you work through what's going on, which we know these traumas can create very real long-term consequences.
Oh, yeah.
And be able to put the work in now when they're young so they don't have to suffer for decades before they can figure out where they need to go.
The family dynamic component of this is massively important. And I tell people all the time, how can you expect to send a healing person back into a sick situation and expect them to continue to heal? Mm-hmm. It doesn't make logical sense. And in practical reality, it will never happen. You cannot try to set somebody down this pathway of healing and then send them right back into that sick. That is more powerful than the healing is at this point of the development, right? And one of the things that I have learned is there is no medical billing code for family therapy.
Oh, I did not know that. We do family therapy, but no, I did not know that.
I mean, think about it. You can't make money on it. So that means if we can't make money on it and we offer the service, we lose money on it, right? And so now we have a choice, right? Are we going to pay for this out of our pocket, or are we going to neglect the situation and expect them to do their part? The reality is, in addiction specifically, if it's one person, the family dynamic has developed such that they are the black sheep, they are the scapegoat, they are the this, they are that, they are the addict. and everybody's pointing their finger at them. And so when that person comes back from treatment, the people who historically have just wanted them to get better and go to treatment and all this stuff, now they're just mad at him.
They're mad, and they're treating
right?
him
Yeah.
same way.
And so now you're still pointing the finger, but for different, you fucked me over, or you stole this, or you hooked up with my wife, whatever it is, right? Like, and now the person who's healing has to deal with a completely different perspective of the damage that they've done, right? Without the expectation of the other people doing any work either. And so in the treatment industry, my question is, are we intentionally setting people up to fail in hopes that they come back, right?
So when you first said that there's no treatment code for family, like when you made that whole first statement and about we're making decisions, that was exactly what ran through my head. I was like, oh, so we're just not fixing. Well, we're creating the problem that's going to continue the funding to keep coming in.
And then
we all know. I mean, if you're anywhere in this world, like, you know that you have to work on, the family. Like we talked about the enabler and the different, like every family has those components. The addict's family will have those components as well. And you have to be able to work on that and stop enabling. And I have that conversations with, the dad and the is using, but the mom's not. And I'm like, well, you think this program's not about you?
Yeah.
It's just as much as about you as it is about him. Like, we have to work with both of you guys.
Yeah.
In order for this to work.
Yeah. The whole you're as strong as your weakest link thing is very real in these situations, because you might be able to exceed and like progress, but you still have to always come back to wherever that person is. Yeah. Right. There is no like them. Like, maybe in like an ideal world, like you could pull them up to you, but that's not how it typically works. Typically, the interaction will always go back to wherever the least developed person is, because that's where they're at. That's how they are interacting. That's where they're at in their healing. And so, I ask that question all the time: is, are we setting people up for failure on purpose to make money? Right? And then I hear things all the time. People are like, yeah, this treatment center over here pays their bills with their relapses. And it's like, what are you talking about? And then I talked to somebody the other day that was like, I went to treatment 28 times. I was like, you went to private paid treatment 28 times? Like, yep, 28 times. Another person, 50 times. All over the country, 50 treatment episodes. And I'm going, our goal here is one and done. And the idea around the model is, if you go to treatment one time, the only time you'll ever need to go back to treatment is for stabilization. Like, if you've been using for months and you need like medical stabilization, otherwise you going to treatment isn't doing you anything.
No.
You need lower levels of care where you're doing DBT and CBT and you're doing trauma work and you're doing all that stuff. That is completely pointless after the first or second time, right? But this is where the money is. This is where they're front loading all the expenses. And so everybody starts these businesses and they point them all back to their residentials, because that's where they make the majority of their money. And I'm like, how did we end up in this situation? How did we end up in a situation where 28 days was the standard? How did we end up in a situation where the things that actually can move the needle in people's lives after they leave treatment aren't being addressed, like family work?
Family component.
And I hear people say all the time, well, we have family day. It's like, yeah, but
what is family day? One Sunday when they're visiting with each other?
Right. And it's like, my question is, what are you doing about the clients that you're flying in from Colorado or New York or whatever? You want their parents to come? Like, well, it's on them to participate. It's like, yeah, but it's also on, so my whole question that I've developed around this is, what is my obligation to the client? Am I fulfilling my obligation to the client in order to like justify I'm paying for my house and my kids' lifestyles and all this stuff? Am I going to be able to look in the mirror and say, am I fulfilling my obligation to my clients? If not, if I'm not doing what it takes to make sure that I'm not fulfilling it, then I've done what everybody else has done, right? And then it's like, when this company started, one of the conversations that we had was, it was me, my brother, my dad, and a consultant. And he was like, look, just tell me what you're getting into this for. Just straight up. Just, are you guys trying to make money or are you trying to help people? He was like, because you can make money and that's fine. Or you can really try to help people and this gets way harder. And it was a conversation where we were like, well, you know, and my dad's got like a private equity firm and a huge law firm. And like my brother and I own other businesses and stuff. And it's like, we could get into this to make money, but we can make money other places. So if we're going to get into this, we're either going to do this right or we're not going to do this at all. So that's how Harmony Grove ended up. Those are like the foundational conversations around what are we going to do? Like, what is our reputation going to be? Who are we going to be in the treatment industry? And so, you know, I asked these questions and I put a lot of thought into all this stuff because I talk to a lot of people that are in the treatment industry. I started talking to judges. I just talked to another juvenile judge. I'm talking to a magistrate judge in a couple weeks, and I'm talking to a judge down in Galveston. All of this is informing me of like, where are we going to go as a company? Where are we going to be like 5 years from now? How effective are we going to be? Like, why are we going to be doing this? What is the mission statement? And are we fulfilling those goals that we're setting for ourselves? And with Dr. Shaw, like when I first got into the business, I just said, I just want to move the needle a little bit. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what that means or how I'm going to do it. And then I met Dr. Shaw and I was like, oh, we can make exponential jumps in efficacies and outcomes for people. And so I'm really excited about where this is going.
Well, I'm excited to learn more about Harmony Grove and what you guys are doing here because it's what I've been wanting on the CPS side as well. You know, more than just, you know, our one women's treatment facility that we have right now.
Yeah.
We need something that's going to, you know, really be working for the individual person.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I appreciate your time. I know you've I think you stayed longer than you were supposed to.
Yeah, I do have a 2:00 meeting.
Okay.
Well,
thank you for coming. And anytime you want to come on, just let me know.
Okay. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to My Last Relapse. I'm Matt Handy, the founder of Harmony Grove Behavioral Health, Houston, Texas, where our mission is to provide compassionate, evidence-based care for anyone facing addiction, mental health challenges, and co-occurring disorders. Find out more at harmonygrovebh.com. Follow and subscribe to My Last Relapse on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you like to stream podcasts. Got a question for us? Leave a message or voicemail at mylastrelapse.com. If you're feeling overwhelmed or struggling, you don't have to face it alone. Reaching out for support is a sign of strength, and help is always available. If you or anyone you know needs help, give us a call 24 hours a day at 888-691-8295.